My cousin started asking me for loans frequently after finding out I earned a monthly salary of $3,000. She claimed it was for saving up, just in case. The amounts went from a few thousand to tens of thousands, and every time it was just borrowing with no signs of repayment. Later, when I was diagnosed with cancer and urgently needed medical expenses, I repeatedly asked her to return the money but to no avail. She scolded me angrily. "Just for this little money, you're always asking. You're like a debt collector, go ask the king of hell instead." Moreover, she spread rumors among relatives and friends that I didn't repay loans and urged everyone not to lend me money. In the end, due to delayed treatment, I jumped off a 30-story building in despair. When I opened my eyes again, time had returned to the day my cousin first asked me for a loan. "Emily Wilson, can I borrow 5,000 yuan? I'll pay you back in a few days." It was my cousin's voice. I heard the sound and saw her probing gaze. The pain in my body vanished, and I realized I had been reborn. In my previous life, my cousin often asked me for loans after learning about my $3,000 monthly salary. At first, she borrowed small amounts, but later it became tens of thousands. I treasured our familial relationship because my parents were gone, and I thought her stable job at the bank meant she'd repay me. But the money I lent her vanished like a thrown dumpling. Later, during a company health check, I was diagnosed with cancer and needed immediate hospitalization. The massive medical bills forced me to ask my cousin again for repayment. However, she not only refused to give me money but sent me to a mountain resort, saying, "Emily, your disease is caused by stress. Go enjoy the view, if your mood improves, your illness will too." I ended up delaying treatment, and my condition worsened. I knelt before her, begging her to return the money to save my life. She cursed me, saying, "If I had money, would I have borrowed from you? Just this little money you keep asking. Go ask the king of hell. I'm really unlucky to have a debt collector like you causing bad luck." She kicked me out, and when I tried borrowing from other relatives, no one helped due to her rumors. She claimed I didn't repay loans, and people should avoid lending me money at all costs. At that moment, I realized my cousin never intended for me to survive. If I died, she wouldn't have to repay me. I felt hopeless and, in desperation, jumped off a 30-story building to end my life in that life. Perhaps heaven pitied me and gave me another chance. In this life, I won't repeat the mistakes of the past. I will distance myself from my cousin and protect my wallet. "Cousin, I won't lend you this money." She looked surprised, not expecting me to refuse. But she didn't give up. "It's just 5,000 yuan. I'll pay you back next week when I get my salary," she said. I coldly interrupted her. "Cousin, with your job at the bank, do you really lack 5,000 yuan? She was taken aback. From her memory, our relationship was good, and I always met her requests. This time, I was resolute about not lending her money, so I raised all the questions I never asked in my previous life. "Besides, your husband also works at the bank. How can you not have 5,000 yuan when next week is right around the corner?" She saw my determination and changed her approach to a sad story. With tears in her voice, she said, "You don't know, Emily, my husband's money is tied up, and my niece just paid for tutoring fees. My money is invested too." I wasn't interested in listening and replied, "Coincidentally, I've also invested my money and can't take it out." Before I could finish, she cut in. "You got 32,515 yuan from your salary yesterday, right?" I was shocked. How did she know exactly how much I got? She knew better than I did. Instinctively, I blurted out, "How did you know my salary?" She realized she slipped up and openly admitted, "Anyway, you won't spend it all. It's better to lend it to me for safekeeping. Don't you trust me?" I stared at her assertive expression and saw through her determination to borrow at all costs. I decided to lend her the money, but this time, I wouldn't make it easy. In my previous life, she borrowed without even signing a contract. This time, I'd make sure she never thought of borrowing from me again. I found an online loan contract and had a lawyer friend adjust it to ensure its validity. The contract included the borrower's identity, loan purpose, and repayment date. Once confirmed, I showed it to my cousin. She wasn't happy when she saw the contract, saying, "Emily, I'm your cousin. Are you worried I won't pay back?" I smiled and said, "Of course not, cousin. You're always so good to me, you could never not repay." Without finishing, she impatiently grabbed the contract, signed it, and stamped her seal. "Look at you being petty. Sign it? I don't believe you'll really sue me." I smiled inwardly, thinking, let's see about that. After signing the contract, I transferred the money to her. She gave me a hard stare and then left. In the evening, I saw my cousin's WeChat post, an expensive set of cosmetics, captioned, "Women should treat themselves." I sneered, thinking she should be tougher on others. With some temporary reprieve from my cousin's troubles, I quickly scheduled a doctor's appointment. In my previous timeline, I was already ill around this time. However, I was too busy working overtime and delayed my health check, missing the best treatment time, which ultimately led to my death. This time, no matter what, I had to preserve my life. After checking at the hospital, they found a suspicious lump in my body. Following a biopsy, it was confirmed to be benign. The doctor said the problem wasn't serious, and I would just need surgery. He also advised me to rest and avoid late-night work. I burst into tears, feeling grateful for a second chance. The doctor thought I was scared and tried to reassure me. Currently, the surgery has a high success rate. Keep a calm mind. I returned home and immediately submitted my resignation to the company. In my previous life, I overworked and ended up ill, not only suffering from my own health issues but also being tormented by my cousin, which ultimately led to my death by suicide. This time, I want to grasp this opportunity and live happily. No amount of money is worth risking my health. As I was logging into my email to draft my resignation, it warned me of a security alert, showing a remote login. I suddenly understood why my cousin knew my salary. A few days ago, she asked to borrow my old computer for her niece, claiming it was for studies. I had just planned to replace my work laptop, so I handed it over. I deleted the usage records but forgot to remove the company email login information. She must have seen my monthly salary details through my emails. In my previous life, I received the same alerts but dismissed them as email bugs. No wonder she always knew when I received my salary and bonuses. In the days that followed, I focused on my treatment while keeping an eye on my cousin's life. Unexpectedly, her life was so elaborate and colorful. She posted at least 3 updates on social media each day, every photo flawlessly retouched with no wrinkles. The content was filled with designer handbags, a red Porsche, and exquisite afternoon teas. She was a perfect queen of luxury persona. Relatives and friends praised her profusely. "Cynthia, you're so impressive. That handbag is hard to get. Cynthia, when can I take a ride in your Porsche? You're really the most accomplished among us. You're doing great at work and got married well. I'm so envious." She enjoyed the admiration, posting more luxuries in her updates. If she's so rich, it's time she repaid those mere $5,000. When the repayment date arrived, I reminded her to pay me back. She replied, "What's the rush? Let's talk later." After a few days, I asked again. She said, "Next month." I continued asking in the following month, but she got angry. "Just that little money, and you're always asking. Aren't you tired of it?" Then, she blocked me on social media. Too bad, I won't get to see her luxurious life anymore. Since she did that, I decided not to be lenient. I decided to sue her. My lawyer friend said it would take some time and advised me to be patient. I wasn't in a hurry to get back that $5,000. I still wanted to see my cousin's colorful life, so I started visiting her bank every day. However, I didn't see her for several days, but her red Porsche remained parked outside. She had once posted 10 times about that car from different angles. I grew suspicious and asked the lobby manager, Helen Lee.
Who does that cool red Porsche outside belong to?
Helen treated me like a potential customer and answered my questions. That car belongs to our bank president, Helen said. I stood there in shock. What? My cousin became the bank president? And still won't repay me? I blurted out instinctively.
Cynthia Blackwood? Is she your bank president?
Helen looked completely confused.
Who? Who is Cynthia Blackwood?
She asked. I quickly showed her my cousin's photo, but Helen shook her head blankly.
That doesn't add up. I saw her post a picture of that car,
I said, showing her a screenshot from my cousin's social media.
Hey! Isn't this a post from Xiaodong's social media?
Helen exclaimed, pointing at a screenshot of a friend's circle featuring a luxurious handbag.
This is my bag! How did it end up on her account?
Security guard George Brown saw us shouting and approached to take a look.
Isn't that food hall auntie? The photo is so retouched it doesn't even look like her.
Hearing this, both Helen and I froze. It turned out my cousin wasn't the bank president or manager, she was just a cafeteria waitress. Helen started identifying everyone involved in my cousin's social media posts. Since it involved theft, everyone called the police, and they summoned my cousin. Soon, I saw my long-lost cousin at the bank cafeteria. Seeing the commotion, she became uneasy and thought I was there to ask for money again. Just as she was about to erupt, the police interrupted her.
Look at this person, is this you?
My cousin thought it was just a routine inquiry and eagerly took the police's phone. Her fingers quickly scrolled through, her expression growing worse as she trembled. The police were straightforward, asking,
Is this bag yours?
My cousin remained silent.
Answer the question! Is it yours?
The police demanded sternly. My cousin attempted to remain composed and repeatedly shook her head, denying it. You're framing me. This was given to me by my husband. Helen stepped forward, questioning her. If you say it's yours, show the purchase receipt. At that moment, my cousin seemed confident. Fine, I'll show it. Wait for it, she said. Soon, she produced a Chanel shopping receipt, looking triumphant. Helen quickly grabbed it and compared it with the purchase information on her phone before handing everything to the police. This bag was bought from a reseller. She took a screenshot of the receipt before sending it to me. The receipts are identical. You're the thief. My cousin, caught off guard, collapsed to the ground. Other people involved in her posts also confronted her, and everyone understood the situation. It turned out my cousin had 2 phones, one for work and one for showing off wealth. She bribed the security guards in the bank surveillance room to sneak into dressing rooms to steal. Because of the guards deliberately adjusting the cameras, my cousin was able to disappear.
She posted the stolen goods on social media as if they were hers, building a
rich and luxurious persona. Unexpectedly, her social media posts became evidence of her theft. As for the red Porsche, she knew she couldn't steal it, so she secretly took the keys and took photos inside the car. No wonder she posted about it more than a dozen times that day. Cynthia, you thought that was the end? Of course not. I had a big surprise waiting. Just as the police were arresting her, a court summons arrived. Cynthia only then realized I had taken her to court. She was furious, cursing at me, "It's all because of you, just a few $1,000s, and you're doing this to me?" Everyone spoke up for me, thanking me for recovering their stolen items, and they all denounced Cynthia. She was like a rat crossing the street, everyone wanted to scold her. Later, Cynthia's husband cleaned up the mess. He helped her return all the stolen items and paid fines. Under his efforts, Cynthia was sentenced to 6 months in prison. After wrapping up everything, he headed out of town to work, taking their niece with him. He knew Cynthia wasn't being a good mother anymore. Before leaving, he paid back the $5,000 Cynthia owed me. I finally got my money back. Later, Helen told me that the bank president sold the ill-fated Porsche soon after and replaced it with a low-key black sedan. Cynthia's husband hadn't told anyone in the family about her imprisonment, saying she was away studying for 6 months. Knowing the truth, I decided to visit Cynthia in prison. When Cynthia saw me, she immediately got angry and shouted, "You little slut. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be in this state."
I looked innocent, questioning her.
What did I do? You're the one who stole from others. I was just there asking for money that day.
You get out. I've always disliked you the most.
She whispered, looking around cautiously, revealing her true feelings.
You're an orphan. If I hadn't pitied you, you would have never been invited to our family gatherings. Who cared about you? Who kept checking on you and sending you clothes and food? You're an ungrateful wretch. You make a lot each month, it's only right that you spend on me. If not for your ability to earn and your parents' house, I wouldn't have bothered with you. Heartless and greedy thing.
I listened to Cynthia's curses without any guilt. For more than 20 years, I had treated her like a sister and contributed a lot to her. When she started working, I spent all my part-time earnings to buy her a pair of shoes. When she got married, I gave her a set of gold jewelry. When her child struggled in school, I used my connections to get them into a better school. Now, I realized she was never as kind to me as she claimed. Other relatives would also invite me to their homes, but Cynthia always asked for money after offering help. The clothes she sent me were hand-me-downs that didn't fit, and the food was expired. In my previous life, I carefully maintained our relationship. But from the start, Cynthia was just exploiting me. In this life, everything will be different. During Cynthia's 6-month imprisonment, I successfully underwent surgery. The doctor said I was recovering well. Overjoyed, I realized I wouldn't die this time. I also changed jobs to something lighter, 9 to 5, with weekends off, and a relaxed atmosphere. Although I earned less, it didn't matter. Being healthy is what counts. Lately, though, I had a feeling someone was watching me. At first, I thought it was just paranoia, but gradually, I started noticing a figure around me. I installed a security camera at my door, and indeed, there was a burly man lurking around. I called 911 quickly, but the police didn't catch him. They asked if I had recently offended anyone. I thought about it. The person I had wronged was still in prison, so it couldn't have been her. The police suggested I stay with relatives for a while and report any abnormalities. So, I contacted Aunt Margaret and temporarily moved in with her. Aunt Margaret was very happy and cooked different dishes for me every day. She was concerned about my safety, so she picked me up from and dropped me off at work. I felt grateful, thinking back on how I used to avoid staying with her in the past. One evening, I received a notification from my home's security system. When I checked, I saw that man sneaking around my door. I quickly called the police and continued observing. He tried the door password a few times, and to my horror, it opened. I realized that if I had been home, I wouldn't have made it. Just then, the police arrived and detained the intruder. I went to the police station with Aunt Margaret, but I didn't recognize the man. He only admitted to burglary and wouldn't acknowledge any other motives. Due to insufficient evidence, the police treated it as a break-in. I couldn't understand why he had been following me if it was just theft. Aunt Margaret was worried and insisted I stay with her, so I agreed. Aunt Margaret maintained her routine of picking me up and dropping me off every day. But suddenly, she stopped doing so for several days. It was strange, she left early and returned late, acting mysteriously. This made me feel uneasy, so I followed her one morning. She drove 3 different cars to get to her destination. I followed her to a resort's entrance. I froze, remembering that I was sent to this place by Cynthia in my previous life. Now, entering the resort again, my body couldn't stop shaking. I followed Aunt Margaret into a conference hall where I saw a group of elderly people listening to a speaker. The voice seemed familiar, and when I looked up, the confident female speaker on stage, dressed in luxury brands, was Cynthia. She was standing there, full of confidence, speaking fluently. I sat in a corner, trying to figure out what was going on. Suddenly, a familiar figure blocked my view, the intruder who had made me too afraid to return home. How did he end up here? At the same moment, he spotted me. His eyes were dark, as if he was about to consume me whole. After listening for a while, I realized my cousin was enticing these seniors with high-interest investments. Under her persuasive words, some elders were eager to invest, rushing to sign contracts around her. Cousin's eyes gleamed with confidence. I took advantage of the chaos to slip behind the stage and found the main control computer. I transferred a video from my phone onto it. After locking the door, I returned to the front and grabbed the mic, shouting, "Everyone, don't trust her. She's a scammer." The hall fell silent instantly. My cousin and the man spotted me, trying to rush over but were stopped by the crowd. The room erupted into commotion. This world doesn't offer such high-interest investments, they want to scam your retirement savings. I warned loudly. But Cynthia defended herself.
Our project is officially registered and 100% legitimate.
Some in the crowd chimed in. Yes, there are official seals on the contracts. A friend invested $500,000 last year and got back $600,000 at the end of the year. Cynthia seemed triumphant, feigning distress. She's my cousin, she owes high-interest loans, tried to coerce me into lending her money for investments, but I refused. The room became loud with everyone turning against me. Poor ghost wanting to get something for nothing, nice try. Yeah, she just wants to ruin our good deal. Don't listen to her, she's just jealous of us making money. I watched as some seniors started signing and others were even pulling out their phones to transfer money. These people were too naive, I couldn't bear watching them lose their life savings. I decided to show a video on the big screen, exposing Cynthia's true identity. I adjusted the volume and began explaining. Your clear teacher, whose real name is Cynthia Blackwood, used to work in a bank cafeteria. Later, she was sentenced to 6 months for theft and failing to repay debts. Please look at the screen. The hall fell silent. The video showed Cynthia confessing to theft and her vile curses against me. Someone murmured,
Isn't Clear Teacher just back from the US? Could she be scamming us? A former convict trying to swindle us. Everything she posted on social media was fake. We've been scammed!
Return my money, return it now. Cynthia, realizing the scheme was exposed, rushed towards me but was restrained by 2 women, who beat her to the ground. The intruder, not far away, tried to rescue her but was blocked by the crowd. Seeing me unguarded, he aggressively approached me, brandishing a blackjack. Just as I couldn't dodge, Aunt Margaret grabbed me and pulled me to the side. Unfortunately, she was hit on the neck and fainted. I rushed at the intruder, ready to fight. Just then, the police arrived, and he fled. Both Aunt Margaret and Cynthia were taken to the hospital. Cynthia was in bad shape, her face all scratched up, and she was still unconscious. Thankfully, Aunt Margaret was okay, just temporarily unable to move her neck. I feigned anger, asking her,
Why didn't you tell me about attending this investment seminar?
Aunt Margaret looked guilty, whispering,
Cynthia said this project could make big money and asked me not to tell anyone.
I was stunned. Aunt Margaret was clearly greedy for money.
I thought I wouldn't live much longer.
Aunt Margaret explained.
Your parents passed away early, and I wanted to leave you a dowry.
My tears couldn't be held back, and I hugged Aunt Margaret, crying. She gently patted me, comforting me. I smiled, realizing Aunt Margaret wasn't foolish. Later, I learned Cynthia not only involved Aunt Margaret but also got my other relatives excited about the investment. Even my uncle and other relatives each invested $100,000 on the first day. After discovering Cynthia's scam, they hung around her hospital room, worried sick. The police said the case was discovered early, and most organizers were caught, making it likely that the money could be recovered. Everyone felt relieved. The police also warned me. There's another person on the run, I think you know who it is. I solemnly nodded. That intruder had escaped again. The police shook their heads. His name is Derek Flynn. He used to work in the bank's surveillance room. It was later confirmed that Cynthia and Derek had an improper relationship. I finally understood everything. Thanks to my intervention, Cynthia was imprisoned and Derek was fired. He harbored a grudge against me. Add to that his connection with Cynthia, surely, Derek wouldn't forgive me easily. A week later, Aunt Margaret recovered and was ready to leave the hospital. As we neared Cynthia's room, a black-clad figure vanished into the corridor. I didn't pay much attention, instead watching Cynthia through the door. Just then, a nurse came in to administer an injection. I asked the nurse, has she shown any signs of waking up? The nurse shook her head, but I had seen Cynthia's eyes moving just before. Let her be. I turned to leave, but the nurse suddenly yelled. Who's smoking in the room? I had Aunt Margaret wait while I went downstairs to get the car. As I opened the car door, I was pushed in with brute force. Before I could react, a glinting knife was pressed against my neck. Don't move. Give me all your money. The familiar voice and cigarette smell, it was Derek Flynn. I feigned surprise. How did you come back? This has nothing to do with you. He growled. If not for you, I wouldn't have been fired. If not for you, Cynthia and I would have made a fortune by now. I'm going to kill you. Brother, calm down. You want money? Killing me won't get you any. I tried to placate him, knowing he and Cynthia were driven by greed. Money is negotiable, but not my life. For now, stalling was key to survival. I have my bag on the back seat. I'll give you all my money, the house, the car, just spare my life. I said. Derek, seeing I was reasonable, slightly loosened his grip. Relieved, I thought. Why go that far? You could have just had money from the start. Derek, with the knife still pressed against me, used his other hand to reach for the bag. Because of the distance between the seats, he had to turn around. I seized the moment when he let his guard down, grabbed a pepper spray hidden under the seat, and sprayed it directly at him. The parking lot filled with his loud yelps. Derek, unable to endure, frantically rubbed his eyes. I, too, was choked by the spray, but quickly exited the car and locked Derek inside. Sitting on the ground, I breathed in fresh air, just as the police arrived. Looking at me and then at Derek in the car, the police chuckled, "You've hurt the enemy but also suffered a bit yourself."
I thought.
You could have come sooner. Derek was arrested, and everything was resolved. Ready to pick up Aunt Margaret, Derek's phone rang. The police gestured for me to answer it. On the other end was Cynthia's voice. Derek, is it done? Come get me. I've taken care of the old lady. Let's go to her house for the money first.
I snapped.
Cynthia, release Aunt Margaret. If you harm a single hair on her head, I won't let you off. Zhang Meng? What are you doing here? Where's Derek? The police motioned for me to stall. We immediately headed there to intercept Cynthia. I said Derek just took my money to find you. Before I could finish, she hung up. No problem, dear sister, I'll see you soon. When Cynthia was holding Aunt Margaret hostage, waiting for Derek, she never expected it would be me and the police arriving, with no sign of Derek. Cynthia saw me standing before her unharmed and completely lost her mind. How are you still alive? I clearly told Derek to kill you.
She burst into laughter.
But it doesn't matter, your time is almost up. I hesitated for a moment, realizing Cynthia might have also been reborn. What's the use of having so much money if you won't live to enjoy it? Cynthia continued her tirade. I smirked. Cousin, have you ever thought why I'm going all out against you this life?
Cynthia fell silent, then angrily shouted.
Did you also get reborn?
I neither confirmed nor denied, just smiled at her.
Good, good.
She muttered in frustration.
This life, you won, but wait and see what happens next. I won't let you off. She rushed towards the street, planning another suicidal rebirth. But she didn't make it to the hospital. She was shot in the leg by police. In the end, Cynthia failed to get the rebirth she sought and was sentenced to 10 years instead. Dear cousin, this life is long, I'll wait for your release. Justice will be served.